If you've ever found something that you truly enjoy, then you may also know the devastating feeling that can come along when that thing is no longer enjoyable. But what's worse, knowing that it's over or knowing that it's still there but will never be the same? If you chose the latter, that's Rising of the Shield Hero, an anime that fell off so hard, the company that produces it apologized. Here's what happened and why, despite it continuing, it won't ever recover. In one of my earlier videos, I ranked Shield Hero as one of the 10 best anime debuts ever. My friend and I nearly gave up on it halfway through episode 1, but decided to keep going. And by the end of that episode, we were so invested that we ended up watching the first 22 episodes that night. So to say I was a fan would be an understatement. Its collapse was completely unexpected. Unlike Seven Deadly Sins, it wasn't sold off to another studio who decided it was best to draw episodes with a crayon. Unlike Promised Neverland, they weren't forced to complete the rest of the series in one season, and then throw multiple seasons of content into a 1-minute montage. No, Shield Hero was renewed for Season 3 before Season 2 even came out. So what the hell happened? The first sign of trouble came when they switched directors from Season 1 to Season 2. In that first season, it was Takao Abo, and in Season 2, it was Masato Jimbo. After Season 2 went poorly, it switched again in Season 3 to Hitoshi Haga. Swapping directors hurt, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Season 2, despite COVID delays, crammed 4 volumes worth of content into 13 episodes. For comparison's sake, 5 volumes were covered in the first 25 episodes of the show. You know what they say, when you have a chance to force more stuff in while cutting the runtime in half, you have to do it. To the complete shock of everyone, this didn't work. And while most have stated the material itself is weaker, cramming it together didn't do them any favors, especially since key details were thrown out entirely. Honestly, it felt like a completely different show in the worst way. Even they knew it. And upon hiring Haga, stated he would be working closely with the author to deliver a strong Season 3. And I can confirm Season 3 is considerably better than Season 2, but is it good? I guess that depends on your definition of good. If by good you mean generic, boring, and hard to watch, then yes, it succeeded. If that's not what you mean, I've got some bad news for you. Sure, Season 3 is more interesting than Season 2, but that bar is so low, not even James Cameron could raise it. Season 3 still feels like a completely different show from Season 1. Early on, Naofumi is a character filled with rage over being wronged, and this conflicted with his naturally kind-hearted demeanor. He was too trusting, and it came back to bite him, and how he responded to that made him interesting. His journey as an infamous outcast whose tough exterior hid his soft interior was a lot of fun to watch. His intensity was one of the best things about him. He could be a dick, but he was justified in it. In the last 2 seasons, he's lost everything that made him interesting. The people behind the show have committed anime's greatest sin: domain expansion, boring character. And if you're a fan of the dub, it gets even worse. If you've ever heard Billy Comet's voice act, you know he was one of the best in the business. The dubbed version of Naofumi in Season 1 had an incredible aura, and Billy was a huge reason for it. Unfortunately, he tragically passed from colon cancer at the age of 35 and was unable to reprise the role. He was replaced by Stephen Fu, who unfortunately has not been able to elevate the Naofumi character in the same way. And unfortunately, the voice acting drop-off isn't the only collapse, because we still have the story to talk about. Season 1 spent most of its time on Naofumi's character and dealing with the waves. These 2 elements were the heart of everything going on, and when the show was at its best. The way that Naofumi was treated was different than your standard isekai, and that made it stand out. And we also ended that first season with the twist that there are other heroes from other universes that oppose our own, and I thought that was amazing. But since then, the show has primarily dealt with spirit beasts, which had little to no setup early on, and aren't compelling. We haven't seen a wave in 2 seasons, despite being the major focus of the most successful period of the show, and the threat that we're immediately introduced to. And that takes us to perhaps the biggest issue with the show going forward. I touched on it a bit with Naofumi, but truly it applies to everyone. What once made characters like Raftalia and Philo interesting before, that's gone. Before, Raftalia and Naofumi were all each other had, and it was a great pairing. They needed each other equally as much, and their flaws were evident. Philo's destiny as the Philolial Queen was interesting, and her childlike nature added an interesting contrast to the group. They were characters growing alongside Naofumi, with interesting setups and personalities. Now they're so generic you might as well give them different names. They are not the same characters that I once loved. How about the other heroes? Before, we hated them because we were supposed to. Now we hate them because every time they go on screen, the show just gets worse. And what have we sacrificed all of this characterization for? Nothing. I don't care about a single new character that has been added over the last 2 seasons. The addition of Ost in season 2 and spending so much time with her was one of the most painful stretches of anime I've ever had to endure. It's not quite as awful as the end of 7 Deadly Sins or Promised Neverland, but again, they have more legitimate reasons for their collapses. And 7 Deadly Sins has a sequel series that's doing what it can to redeem the original. Even the action in Shield Hero feels generic now. There's nothing interesting or unique that makes any fight stand out or feel memorable. They all feel the same. Without looking it up, I wouldn't be able to tell you how a single fight from the last 2 seasons ended. Shield Hero has followed up garbage with boring. What was once a show that was as emotionally investing as it could get has destroyed every part of the show that once made it interesting. The lead, the plot, the rest of the main cast, even the tone. It's all gone, like Thanos snapped it away. And we still have at least one more season left to bury this legacy even further. Maybe the worst part of all of this is that I don't even miss it. The last 2 seasons have stripped away everything that made the show good in the first place. There's nothing to miss. There's nothing left to draw me back. And that's why I have no faith Rising of the Shield Hero will ever return to form. And I don't even care if it does. That's why it's the biggest collapse in anime.